In today's episode, Taming the Storm, Emotional Regulation for First Responders, I'm going to dive into a critical aspect of your well-being, your emotional regulation. So imagine being thrust into a high-pressure situation where every second counts. The weight of the trauma and life or death decisions can intensify your emotions, leaving you feeling overwhelmed. But what if you had a tool to manage those intense feelings and regain your composure, no matter what the chaos was around you? So join me as I uncover the emotional triggers unique to you as first responders, the vital role of emotional regulation in building resilience, and practical techniques that you can implement right now to navigate those moments of crisis. Plus, I'm going to guide you through an empowering exercise to help you map out your emotions to effective actions, ensuring you stay grounded and focused when it matters most. So let's take this journey together, because in the line of duty, your emotional strength is just as important as your physical resilience. Welcome to Shields Down, Healing for First Responders, the podcast supporting those on the front lines as they navigate PTSD and trauma. Each episode brings stories of resilience, expert insights, and tools for recovery, offering hope and a path forward. So put your shield down, reclaim your strength, and remember, you're not alone. Okay, so understanding your emotional triggers in high stress environments. What does that look like? How do we begin to really look at these triggers, right? As first responders, we're frequently encountering traumatic events, emergencies, and life-threatening situations, which can really heighten emotional sensitivity. The consistent pressure to act decisively in critical moments can really lead to a buildup of unresolved emotions, making us more susceptible to triggers that may provoke anxiety, anger, or stress. But what's that impact on us? What is that impact of constant repeated stress? Right? The cumulative, word always gets me, effect of repeated exposure to high stress scenarios can really create emotional volatility. Right? It can lead to unpredictable responses to seemingly minor stressors. Now, this volatility can manifest as things like irritability, mood swings, or overwhelming feelings. It can really complicate both personal and professional relationships. But recognition is the biggest step. It's the key step. Because when you can understand and recognize your emotional triggers, it can really help you, as a first responder, identify specific situations or cues that really provoke strong emotional reactions, right? You can develop proactive strategies to manage your responses. But this awareness is foundational for implementing coping mechanisms, seeking support, and ultimately fostering your emotional resilience. But if you don't recognize, if you don't focus on these reactions, if you don't focus on identifying these triggers and seeing what they are within your life, you're not going to be able to get over them, because you won't even know that they're there. And that's the biggest point. If you know that they're there, you can actively pay attention to them. You can actively begin to remove them. And the role that emotional regulation plays within your resilience and building you into that newer, stronger self is crucial, right? It allows you to effectively manage your stress responses, right? As first responders, when we begin to recognize and modulate our emotions, we're going to be better equipped to cope with pressures on the job, right? We're going to be better equipped to reduce the likelihood of burnout and foster a more balanced approach in our duties. Because we're paying attention to us. We're paying attention to what we're going through and how we're feeling. And that's going to be a life changer, my friends. Right? When you can emotionally regulate and you can understand why you're feeling and what you're doing and where you're going, you're going to have improved decision making, right? You're going to have the ability to regulate your emotions because it's going to contribute to clearer thinking. It's going to help with your decision making. It's going to help you in the long run, especially in high pressure situations, right? People who maintain, specifically first responders who maintain emotional composure, right? We're going to be able to assess the situation rationally and make timely, effective choices, which are ultimately going to lead to better outcomes in those critical incidents, right? If you're not emotionally available, if you're all over the place with your emotions, or you get triggered by going to events or certain places, I know that within corrections, as a correctional officer, as a firefighter, EMS, police, we often go to similar places, right? We have to respond to similar situations. Sometimes, like let's say for a domestic dispute, an officer is going to respond to the same place over and over again. Maybe an EMS is going to respond to an older person that's struggling, or maybe someone with mental health issues. They're responding to that situation over and over again, so they can be triggered by those places itself. But if you can begin to regulate your emotions and understand, okay, I know that when I go to this place, I'm going to be triggered. So I'm going to do some of these techniques that I've been taught, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, and it's going to help me kind of regulate my emotions during that. And then I'll make sure to do my debrief, my journal, and everything afterwards. But you have to pay attention to where you're going and what you're doing. You can't just go into it and hope for the best, right? You're going to have faster recovery from your trauma if you begin to regulate your emotions, right? So when you're triggered and you go to these situations, you're going to employ coping mechanisms and strategies, and you're going to be able to maintain a level of emotional stability, right? And you're going to be able to process the experience more effectively and allow you to bounce back and go, okay, I did good on that call. Now I got to move on to the next, because sometimes calls come in back to back, right? And you're going to be able to continue your vital work without being overwhelmed by these past encounters. You're going to be able to control and move into that next phase of your life and who you want to be. So what are a few little techniques that you can use to manage these intense emotions in the moment, right? In the moment is the biggest thing, right? As you're going to the call, right? Do some breathing exercises, right? The 4-7-8 method, which is you inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 7, exhale for 8, right? That might be a little long, but you could do the 4-4-4. You could do the box method, which is breathe in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, and do that 4 times, right? When you can practice this regularly, it's going to train the body to respond more calmly to stressors, right? You're creating new neurons in your mindset when you begin to create these habits, when you begin to do these different techniques, because it's going to help you. Maybe once the situation is over, you can do the grounding techniques, the 5-4-3-2-1, right? I spoke about that earlier, right? Identifying 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and then take 1 big deep breath, right? And again, regularly practicing these grounding techniques are going to help you feel more anchored. How about cognitive reframing? Okay, some of you might go, what is that? Okay, so this technique involves shifting your perspective on a situation to reduce its emotional impact. Now, when you respond to the situation, you won't be able to do it at that time, but you'll definitely be able to do it later. So you can practice reframing negative thoughts into a more positive or neutral ones, right? Instead of thinking something like, I can't handle this, or I can't get to this place, you might think, I've dealt with these challenges before and I can manage this one too, right? Reframing it just that simply. And then when you regularly engage in these cognitive reframing, it's going to help you build a resilient mindset, and it's going to make it easier to apply when your emotions run high, right? But you have to be consistent practicing these techniques to ensure that they become second nature. I know that when I go to a situation, I can do breathing techniques on the way. I know that after a situation, I can grab my journal. I immediately grab my journal and I do walking, because that's how I debrief myself. These are things that I've learned to control and I've learned to do on myself. And that's when and how I create the resiliency I have in my life. So today's exercise that I want to leave you with is an emotional action mapping for immediate response control. Okay? This exercise is going to help you recognize your emotional state and match it with an appropriate action to maintain control in these high stress situations. Okay, so step 1 is to identify your current emotion. So pause for a moment and check in with yourself. Label the primary emotion you're feeling. Okay, am I feeling angry, frustrated, fearful, sadness, right? Simple by saying, right now I'm feeling frustrated right now. Or right now I'm feeling this. Whatever the emotion is, say it out loud and bring it alive, right? Step 2 is to map the emotion to an action, right? So match the emotion with an immediate calming action based on the pre-prepared list. Okay, so you want to prepare these beforehand. So anger, right? Take 5 seconds to pause and unclench your fists. Consciously relax your muscles, right? Maybe you have fear, so focus on your breathing, slowly in and out, reminding yourself of your training and your capabilities. Maybe you're frustrated, right? Step back mentally. Take 2 deep breaths and then recall a recent success or strength. Maybe you're sad, so ground yourself by engaging in your environment. Touch something stable, the wall, a chair, just to stay present. And then step 3 is to reflect on the change. So after you've taken the action, assess how you feel now that you've done it compared to how you felt before, right? Consider if further actions needed, or if you're ready to proceed to the task at hand, right? Keep this as quick, like go-to strategy, right? So what are you going to do? You're going to pause. You're going to identify the current emotion. I'm feeling like this right now. Then you're going to map out the action which you've already prepared, okay? So this is, again, knowing your triggers. I know that I get mad quickly. I know that I'm irritable. I know that, I get emotional, like crying, sadness, which again is fine. It's part of life. But you have to learn, if you're in a situation and you're dealing with something, you get emotional, it's probably not the right time. So you have to figure that out, right? Maybe you get frustrated at your partner, at something, whatever it is. You have to begin to understand and go, okay, what's that pre-prepared list that I've made for myself? And then finally, as you reflect, go, okay, so I did this. Did it help? How did it feel? Did it work? Or do I need to kind of change my pre-prepared list? And that's what it's all about. And then you make it something that works. Sometimes this stuff doesn't work first time. Sometimes you really have to begin to work at it over and over. And then eventually it becomes one. Like I create every morning, off topic for sure, is I have a morning power hour. I do certain things in the morning. I work out. I reflect on how my day's going to go. I do visualization. I create a perfect day. And then I read and I meditate, and these are different things that I do in the morning. And I've created this morning power hour, but it's taking me time to kind of make it the way I like it. I didn't like the way that flowed, so I'm going to try something else. And I keep trying stuff until it works. And that's what you have to do. You have to learn to just, again, reflect and say, okay, what's working, what's not. And that's how you begin to build this resilience. You begin to build this life that you're wanting to be. So, again, thank you for joining me on today's episode. Today I explored the essential role of emotional regulation in building resilience as a first responder. Now, I discussed how understanding your emotional triggers, enhancing your ability to manage stress, and employing practical strategies that can empower you to navigate the most challenging situations with clarity and composure. Remember, emotional regulation is not just a skill, right? It's a crucial tool in your toolbox for resilience. Now, by regularly practicing breathing exercise, grounding techniques, cognitive reframing, you can ensure that these strategies become second nature when you need them most. So I encourage you to try the emotional action mapping exercise. Right? Reflect on your feelings. Take constructive actions to maintain control in these high stress moments. The more you integrate these practices into your routine, the better equipped you'll be to face the storms of your work. Thank you for tuning in to Shields Down, Healing for First Responders. Remember, healing is a journey, and each step forward matters. Now, if today's episode resonated with you, share it with someone who might need it. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories, insights, and tools for recovery. Together, we'll build a stronger, more resilient community. Until next time, stay safe, stay strong, and we'll see you on the next episode.